I'm delighted that Jane Robinson is going to join us, and Jane has been working tirelessly in this space for a long time, and interestingly, I think Jane may talk a little bit about her background, but before becoming Dean of Engagement and Place, which is a job description to die for, I think, Jane was a chief executive in a local authority. So I think bringing that real inwardness and understanding of the context in which universities work. So Jane, I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Paul. Can everyone hear me okay?
That's good.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes. I think building on some of the themes that have emerged from Jackie's brilliant presentation and some of the chat. And just to say, in terms of the question of how we're collaborating, we are working very closely with Northumbria University, and Stephen Kippin and Sue Graham are from Northumbria are on the line, and I'm sure we'll be able to add to this presentation. But I've also reflected in these notes a little bit more on the impact of it. If I can get the slide to move, yeah. So I'll just go back one. So, in terms of what I'm going to cover, a bit about how we've been developing the agreement and what happened in February, events, I'm afraid, but how we've responded to that and some of the challenges forward. So I wanted to start off by just sort of setting a bit of context, and this also reflects some of the questions that people have. I think there's a long tradition as a civic university and engaging with for Newcastle University, but as we thought about how we might develop what we're calling the Newcastle Agreement, our Civic University Agreement, we really wanted to make sure that we had the capacity and that we'd embedded the approaches across university. I think that point about vision and leadership is really important. This slide has a screenshot of our vision and strategy, and engagement place is one of our 4 core strategies. I was brought into the university as previously having been COO at Durham University, but before that having spent most of my career in the public sector, and I was brought onto the executive board to really lead on delivering this strategy, and there's real commitment from the VC and across the university. Built quite a lot of capacity with the team, a number of cross-cutting deans with sector specialisms, and we've developed the support for colleagues across the university. We've also thought about the systems and processes that we need to have in place to really build this into everything that we do as a university. And there's also the internal governance and accountability. So we have an engagement and place committee that reports through to Senate and Council. So there's quite a lot of visibility on what we're doing here. So just a quick slide here on how things have been progressing. We've put a lot of time into developing the governance and partnership arrangements. And as I say, that's included bringing the 2 universities together, working with our anchor institution partners, particularly the local authority and the NHS, but reaching out to others more widely as well. We were really conscious of the need to make sure that we had that widespread engagement and the understanding of needs and opportunities in our local area. Like many, we do regular stakeholder surveys, so we made the decision not to do something specifically targeted to the Civic University Agreement, but we've done lots of engagement events and built on existing networks. For example, establishing a social justice advisory group that helps us understand and engage with the community and voluntary sector. We also did a fantastic project with Common Purpose called Newcastle 150, where we all contributed to working with many young people from all sorts of different backgrounds to get their vision and ambitions for the city and the wider place. We've been thinking about how do we develop a framework for measuring impact, and we agreed as a partnership to build and use the UN SDGs as the basis for that. So we've undertaken a local area review, and we hope that that will give us a sense of a benchmark that is relevant locally, but also something that translates nationally and globally as well. And we're actually thinking about and starting to develop some shared indicators which are relevant to the local area and linked into the local authorities' joint strategic needs assessments. And linked to that, we've also been thinking about, well, so what are the key strategic projects that are going to meet those needs and those shared priorities? So just some examples of things we've been getting underway. The Newcastle Net Zero project is focusing on climate change, using our academics with local partners to provide a roadmap to net zero. We've developed a student charter with Northumbria ourselves, but also Newcastle College. There are a higher proportion of students in Newcastle than pretty much any other city in the UK, and it seemed really important that we got the student voice in that and their role as citizens. So that's something that's underway as well. And we also wanted to make that connection between the local and the global. We've been developing place-based partnerships to share experiences. So for us, Pittsburgh's been an important focus as a place that has similar social and economic characteristics and history to Newcastle in the North East. And we also want to make sure that we build on evidence and use evidence-based policy making in the future to understand the differences that we can make. And so we've completed a feasibility study, and we're looking at the establishment of a policy and evidence hub. So we were making great progress. And then events. February and COVID-19 hit, and we had to think a little bit differently. We were on track to launch our Civic Newcastle Agreement in the summer, but I think we felt that when COVID hit, we had to really recognise the fact that everybody had to turn their attention and capacity to dealing with the public health emergency that we were all facing, and indeed still are facing. I think what I would say, though, is that all the work that we've been doing, the capacity that I was talking about, the networks, the partnerships that we'd established, really meant that we were in a good position to respond rapidly and in a targeted way to that response. For example, cross-cutting zines meant that we had insights and links into the cultural sector, the community and voluntary sector, the business sector, to understand what the issues were and how we could work together in terms of that emergency response. We mobilised our partnership with the anchor institutions, and you can see some of our core partners down the right-hand side, really to do some rapid problem solving and addressing issues. So at a really practical level, dealing with accommodation for students, we were able to work together on that as two universities with the City Council and others. And we're looking at how we kind of start to think about those different phases, recognising that probably we're going to see that not in a linear way, but different approaches coming forward. Just want to say a little bit about emergency response. So the key thing here was about how we coordinate and communicate. So our COVID Civic Response project, there's loads of information on our website, so we can share the link on that. And we identified some of the key themes in the ways in which we could support the wider community. Just two examples I was going to highlight. One around the production of PPE, massive issue across the country. Fantastic collaboration between the two universities, manufacturers and the NHS to design and produce face shields to meet the urgent need at the RVI in Newcastle. Really good example of collaboration. The second one I was going to highlight was around the issue of connecting volunteers to where they were most needed. So our academics within computer sciences worked with the voluntary sector and the City Council to design an online platform to link volunteers to the most vulnerable in the city. The speed at which this was happening was quite phenomenal. We are obviously, as with many, starting to think about what recovery might look like and renewal as well. So both the universities are involved in a restart project and the college as well. And we've been supporting the City Council as part of an early mentor for track and trace and restart. And so we've been inputting our expertise, but also that understanding of what it's going to take to get the universities opening again, the students back in, staff in, research starting. That is a critical part of actually restarting the economy in the area. We're also thinking about what have we learn from this experience? What does it mean for the future vision? And I think, as Alex and others were reflecting, we're actually thinking about the Newcastle Agreement through a COVID lens. What is needed to support the longer term economic, social and cultural recovery of the place, recognising that COVID is likely to exacerbate existing inequalities. So how do we really focus and make a difference there? And of course, we're linking this to the wider regional economic response. I represent the 4 universities on our economic response group, which includes the local enterprise partnership, business, the combined authorities. And as a sector, we are providing data and evidence and linking to see where innovation and research and our teaching and learning activities can respond to those place-based priorities. So I think in one respect, COVID-19 has had a massive impact on our Civic University agreement. Our plans for a lovely big public launch this summer have been put a little bit on hold while we reflect and make sure that we're really focusing on the things that will make a difference. But in reality, I think that the work that we have done with our partners and within the university has meant that we've had the relationships and the structures to respond quickly to what's been needed, but that we're also playing our part in helping to build what the future might look like. So whatever the uncertainties and challenges are ahead, and clearly there are many for the sector and society more widely, I think it's very clear in Newcastle that the civic role of the universities has never been more important. Thank you.
Again, wouldn't it be great to be able to applaud? You can applaud in chat, as some people are demonstrating so beautifully. Thank you. Thank you, Jane. A chance now for a few questions. It's been great watching the chat. It's been really interesting. Not only are people responding to what the presenters are saying, but they're also connecting with each other, which I think is the whole point of this network. Jane, there was a question about what is local for Newcastle. This is from Matthew Snape. He says, what is local for Newcastle University, given the global orientation of its mission? Is the city of Newcastle, is it the city of Newcastle, or is it something else? Well, interesting question.
Yeah, I think it is a really interesting question, and I was fascinated to hear more about the clear approach that Jackie and Sheffield Hallam have taken to this. I mean, I think for many of us, that sort of notion of what level we work at is a really complex one, both in terms of geography and politics. So, I mean, we have talked about, and we are focusing on the Newcastle Agreement, and you know, our core partnership is with the anchor institutions in the city, but we also recognise absolutely the role that we play in the wider region and nationally, internationally as well. So we are really focusing on our engagement within Newcastle as a city, but we're also thinking about how do we learn from that and connect that into what is happening internationally. And I mentioned the partnership with Pittsburgh is a really interesting one, as a place that has many similarities to Newcastle and the Northeast. And we are seeing that not as an institution to institution partnership, but actually a place to place partnership. So we've had an international conference which was due to be in the States in March, but that was going to involve the leader of the council coming on a delegation to learn from the experiences internationally. So, I mean, I don't sign up to the view that civic means it has to be tightly defined into the city in which you're located. I think it's really important that as universities we're able to engage directly with our local communities where we are operating. But those connections and those benefits need to spread more widely as well. Great.
Thank you. There's a lot of interest, Jane, in the common purpose and the approach to the Newcastle 150. And just to reassure people, we have got links for you. We will be able to send you to find out more about that. But a number of people, including Dee, have asked if you could just say just a little bit more about how you've approached that.
Yeah. So this was a great project. We wanted to really hear the voice of young people. So this wasn't just our students, but it was young people between the ages of 18 and 25 who lived or worked or studied in the city. And we got together with Common Purpose. This was this is a legacy program that they first ran in Chicago, and we taught Common Purpose. It's never been in the UK before, but it's really getting young people together from all sorts of different backgrounds to articulate and address a challenge for the future. So what would they want their legacy to be? And the reason it was called 150 was that in 2032, Newcastle, it would be 150 years since Newcastle had city status. So the challenge was, what would need to happen to make Newcastle a place where every young person could fulfil their potential? And loads of partners signed up to that, the two universities, the City Council, the Health Trust, but businesses as well. So it was a great event, and we just got it under the wire before lockdown. And we're going to be working with that group of young people and young leaders in terms of how we continue to engage, and for them to really sort of challenge us on how we are taking forward the future of place. But as you say, Paul, there's lots more information, and there's a link that I can share.
Thank you. There was a question from Brian, I think, about how you've engaged students in a way that's avoided tokenism, which I think is a really helpful prompt. How have you done that?
Yeah, we were really keen that our students played an active role in this. And as I mentioned, we have a high proportion of students in Newcastle. When you bring together Northumbria University, ourselves, and the college, you're talking about 70-odd thousand students in the city, and they play a really important role, incredible contribution, not just economically, but their role as citizens. But we also recognise there are often tensions from that as well. So engaging the students is really important. We had a forum called Students in Newcastle Forum, and through that we agreed that we would develop what we're calling a student charter, which was really led by the students in terms of understanding what was important to them, but also understanding what's important to the place. And that's something that we're still developing at the moment, but there are some key themes there which range from things like employability through to role of the students as citizens, through to really important practical issues like accommodation. And that's really been driven through the two students' unions from the university and from the college. So we hope that we'll be in a position in the summer to formalise that agreement.
Great. Thank you very much, Jane.